Addition.
You are good to go.
All right, good. Thank you, Mr. Clapper. Let's call the meeting to order and let's observe a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Chair looks for a motion to approve the minutes from November 27th.
No move.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, would you all please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We skip all the way down to, listen, unless we got some information from legal on this one, I can push this into the next meeting. H1, which was something I asked for. Magali, do you have anything to add to this? This something that's okay that we push this one into the next meeting? Legal?
Yes, that's certainly fine to do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No objection.
It's just, I know you guys missed that discussion, but anyway. H2, Councilman Bowden, you're up.
All right. Well, this is going to be a real productive meeting then, I guess, because after talking to Eric and some other folks in planning, I think it might be a better idea to make this sort of like a working group of the West Ashley Revitalization Committee or Commission. That way we can kind of pull it together and then disband it, and it won't create any other issues with the ongoing function of the existing stormwater authority.
Well, again, we're just discussing.
Sure, but happy to hear everybody's
I
thoughts.
like the idea of having a commission out there, maybe just activating it, because obviously the people that live out there or do business out there are going to be concentrated on that. Probably more informed on that than maybe some of the other things that will come before the commission. I'm still not saying a person could be represented on the West Ashley Revitalization Commission, but anyway, I thought they had a commission out there. I thought we just needed to maybe reinvigorate it somewhat. Maybe.
Yeah,
obviously it's in your backyard, but.
That works for me too. I mean, my original thinking was, let's bring together the people that are on there, with, maybe some additional folks who are not represented on there already, but have an interest in the area, whether from a business standpoint or from, personal reasons like living out there. So maybe you're right. Maybe the original idea was better just to get that group meeting and make sure that we're all on the same page, because it hasn't met since 2021.
Right. Well, maybe if you can put some life back into it, maybe the chairperson of that group can be on the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. But
sure.
I like the idea of having, I got to give the people downtown credit in historic district and the like. I mean, they turn out and they know their subject. I'm not saying they're singular in the subject, but when they turn out, they're well organized. And frankly, we need some of that West Ashley. And if that's an issue that we can galvanize about, and certainly that drainage basin, I think needs more attention and funding. Why not? So I'll support you in whatever you want to do out there, but we need more attention out there, I think. And I hear you on the commission, but I think you can get a twofer. You can have the people out there engaged, and maybe have the chairperson off of that be a part of the Revitalization Commission. Anyway, Mr. Chair, I start calling you Mr. Chairman. You sat in so much, Peter. Councilman Shahid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm presuming that this authority, and I'm just trying to remember this from ancient history, seems like that we created this out of an ordinance, right?
Right.
So the makeup of this is going to have some specificity to it.
That's right. And so I was when I originally conceived of this, I was thinking, to try to bring together the people who have money. So maybe a representative of the county councilman that represents the area, or designee of the state house representative who represents the area, the state senator represents the area, as well as 2-3 like landowners in the area, or developers who represent the area, in addition to the folks who are already on there. And there's some people that we may need to reappoint, but who have kind of led groups that have advised the city on flooding issues for a while now.
So going back to the chairman's point, it would serve, I think, you well for this authority to, number one, it can still remain this independent authority, not part of the revitalization commission, but having the chairperson of that on the revitalization commission. That makes perfect sense to me. And that you ask for and receive regular reports to the West Asheville Revitalization Commission. If it's monthly or quarterly or semi-annually or annually, I think that's a good idea. So they know at least what's going on with that. And that, and if you're appointed to the commission, take my spot, that gives you 2 voices on there, which makes perfect sense. But I think you're right. I think you've got to start revitalizing this authority. It's a great idea. I mean, you got to give your predecessor credit for coming up with this concept, and now just sort of take the ball with it and run with it a little bit.
Especially now, since the TIF is beginning to generate some revenue. Before the TIF was a goal and objective, and then we got it in place. So I don't know, the members of I'll come to you in a second, Mr. Fountain. I don't know if any of the people around still willing to serve, or again, you get some new appointments that some people that you obviously know and around the area that has some talent to bring to bear. Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I just wanted to mention that it is a good time to have the discussion for the membership, because the membership terms are limited. So everyone on the current authority who isn't a positional appointment, like the mayor is an automatic appointment, the county council person that represents that district is an automatic appointment, but every other position will need to be reappointed in order to have the committee re-meet or a new person appointed. So it is a good time to have that discussion with the incoming mayor and find out who he would potentially want to appoint into those positions, with perhaps the advocacy of the council members, and determine whether or not we want to make any adjustments to that membership either. I mean, you could in theory ask for a member of the work to serve on the Church Creek Stormwater Authority as one of the positions. Right now we have, and I can pull up the list if anyone would like it, but we have a series of different categories that have to have categorical representation.
Right.
If you have that handy, that'd be great.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind suggesting anybody who you feel like from the stormwater side really needs to be on there, that like the utility folks, or if you feel like that's a good makeup and we just need to add to it.
I think it depends a little bit on where we want the authority to go, which I think was sort of your original point of conversation, Councilman, that the original makeup was with the intent of sort of these collaborative projects from property holders and different entities working in this area. We had some initial discussions, kind of came up with the projects that we could out of that group, and have progressed those projects obviously through now design. So it is a good time to consider, do we want to have a different spin on the committee, or are we comfortable with that approach? And I just for refresher, I guess this is the purpose of the original committee in the ordinance, which was to review, rank, and recommend projects based on funding, increase community awareness, assist city staff with getting implementation of those projects. That was the idea of getting the other landowners and developers and also people with government resources, as you mentioned, Councilman Bowden, to talk about it, and then making recommendations on private and public partnerships, which was the idea with the developers and some of the faith-based community members to try to find projects that we could all build together in that basin. That led to this membership layout, which was appropriate, I think, for those purpose statements. There certainly is an option, as you had mentioned, if you wanted to shift more into how do you kind of boost the TIF revenue generation into more of like an economic development side of project work, which was not the original view. You could either, as you mentioned, tie that into the work, which is sort of set up to do that. You could change membership to include someone from the work on the committee. We could just do it with the reports back and forth. There's lots of ways to consider it, but now is a good time if you're going to make any of those modifications to make them. And yes, either way, we'll have to recommend someone for each of these positions. Some of them are relatively straightforward to find. Some of them are a little more challenging to fill. So it definitely needs some legwork to lead up to successful meetings, I think.
Okay. Councilman Val?
Make sure we're doing the procedure right. So that makes perfect sense to me. And I think there's two good ways to do it, but maybe just to make sure that we're getting off the ground and getting all these people together and doing it in sort of one fell swoop, maybe just like add to this list, I don't know how to phrase it, but stakeholder groups, I guess that's why we have lawyers, like representative stakeholder groups, the Metro Chamber and Realtors Association and such, see if they have any input, as well as, maybe I guess if we have an expert on drainage and flooding, maybe that checks off any sort of stakeholder we might need from one of those type of groups, but maybe consider that as well. So I guess maybe need a motion to send this to legal to draft to draft an ordinance that expands the scope of this to include advising on how we can increase funding for the TIF and add members, like I just said in that rambling statement.
Let me ask this, Mr. Fountain, do you have a list of who was on the committee?
I do have a list of who was on the committee. I will mention the hardest position to fill, if I recall correctly, was the public relations delegate. I have to double check to see if were ever able to fill that category, but I do have a list of everyone who served on the committee previously.
We did fill that position, but as you say, it was a hard one, Matt, and it may have that person may have dropped out.
Can you tell me some of the thinking on having that person on the committee?
That was one of the purposes, and the purpose statement of the committee was to kind of increase knowledge about what the flooding challenges are in the basin and what could be done to try to mitigate those flooding problems. So I think the thought was for someone who had experience working in public relations or a media firm to have some ideas on how to get the word out in the community about that. There's other approaches to do that, though. You could have a member of a neighborhood associations, or obviously we have things like faith leaders and residential property owners that can also participate in that type of outreach.
I remember, because I'm nothing wrong with dating myself. I remember when St. Francis was trying to come West Ashley. At the time, Roper and St. Francis were competitors, and because now they combined, but everybody was trying to get West Ashley, because that, it was the growing area, get a hospital out there, and obviously St. Francis won, but there was a committee that drove that, of local stakeholders. Glenn McConnell, there was something called a Highway 61 Commission prior to Glenn McConnell being built. Traffic used to back up from, the World War I bridge coming out of town all the way to Shadow Moss, bumper to bumper. And then that advocacy group, Highway 61 Commission, is what drove Glenn McConnell to get its funding and design and eventually being built. So I kind of see this similar to Councilman Bowden, your goal and objective of hey, the goal and objective is trying to get the drainage situation out there filled. But anyway, Councilman Shade, I see your hand.
Yep. So how many neighborhood are impacted with the with Church Creek?
Much.
I don't have an exact count, but there certainly are a number. I mean, Shadow Moss as a community is sort of a subset of a number of smaller neighborhoods, and then there are neighborhoods that are not part of Shadow Moss in that section of Church Creek, like Hickory Farms and Hickory Hill, and some of the surrounding neighborhoods. So it's
right,
like thousands of homes. I'm not
right.
exactly
Canterbury Woods, all of that. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I asked that question, Mr. Chairman, is because you got a neighborhood residential property owner, and as big as this area is with the number of residents, and I didn't mean to count cutting that off, but it seems to me that I would much rather have some more citizens on this authority. And you know, and Councilmember Bowden, maybe you and Councilmember Shealy or Councilmember Brady would have a good idea of adding more. I would rather have those kind of bodies on there, so it's more representative than having, like you pointed out, a public relations person. And I'm not sure about the faith-based community advocate either, but you know, that would be more representative, wouldn't it? And more, I mean, you could get more input from people saying, hey, we've got a problem in Hickory Hills, or we got a problem over here in this part of Shadow Moss. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas at you.
Well, that plus, you know, one of the, if you look at the inner portion of, now I know parts of the circle is developing well, but the portion that's across from, I guess, Walmart, you know, been kind of slow to develop on that quadrant. And Councilmember Pell, I think some of the design corridor review issues are getting slowing development there. My understanding there's a Chick-fil-A that's currently going through grief right now, trying to get the development in the circle. And obviously, you know, so some of the commercial property owners in and around that area, I bet you they'll have something to say about that. So that certainly would make sense to bring some representation there, current, in particular the landowners in and around that commercialization of the circle, because you know that's where the money from the TIF comes from.
Absolutely. Apparently, we're about to get the most unique looking Chick-fil-A in America out in our area. Councilor Shade, just to your point, I think when this came about and everybody, you know, all these roles were defined, if I had to guess, there was a person in mind for just about every one of them. So for the faith-based community advocate, I think generally, I would guess that it was the pastor at Crosstown who was on that, who's been spending their own money working on these issues, and I know that's been somewhat helpful. I bet that he would probably continue to do that, and Councilmember Shealy knows him better than I do. I think the fear of including more like neighborhood association individual. Well, first of all, we have poorly organized neighborhood associations out in this area for whatever reason, and there's been some resistance to making them better organized. But also, then you start getting into smaller interests than the whole. And that's a little bit of a concern of derailing any sort of progress toward a bigger solution. You get a lot of why isn't this part of Church Creek and Hickory Hill being cleaned out as opposed to these storage solutions within Shadow Moss. So that kind of stuff I think it'd be a good idea to try to avoid.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the impetus for this really came from the community out there, the folks who are doing Long Savannah and John Rivers, who really came and talked about the need to do this. And they were the ones I think who really focused on the public relations delegate to try to make a better case and get the message out more clearly. But I think that was where the impetus came from.
Well, let me ask this. Now we are where we are. And for instance, back then we were talking about a big old pump station. Certainly we got updated a meeting or two ago about our reality is probably not going to be with a $50 million pump station, and the solutions are broad-based, I would think, and many as opposed to one solution. How would we do it today? I mean, this is a template, but would we tweak this? I mean, I think you would tweak it today versus when we first did this. I don't think, did we have one business in it, Rick? I don't think we did.
No, I mean, Harris Teeter was just getting off the ground then, I think.
Right. So we know a lot more now about the basin, and I think we can target, maybe tweak this to maybe suit your needs and the commercial community needs as well as the residential community's needs. And I think about the West Ashley revitalization. I think the county council person who represents this area is also on the work. So anyway, now, Councilmember Pell, it's time for you to chime in now. You got to come off of mute, man. You got to say something.
I mean, whatever y'all want to do out in Church Creek is cool with me.
Hey, man, we all in this together now. Come on.
I don't know. My only suggestion would be that, we got to be pretty clear on what we're trying to accomplish before we start setting up a group. I don't think lay people are going to have anything to contribute to massive stormwater challenges out on Church Creek. I think that is a super complicated, super expensive endeavor that is just going to require leadership at a governmental level, at a multi-jurisdictional level, where people on the ground and stakeholders can play a role is when you start talking about getting easements from people and public-private cooperation, things of that nature. But that's sort of a separate thing.
Right.
When I hear about like a person off the street is going to have nothing to contribute with respect to Lake Dotterer, right? That's a complicated engineering question, and
Right.
it's something we've got to grapple with. But if we need help from the church to get a stormwater easement, on their side property line, maybe that's something where we can pull in some neighborhoods and stakeholders. So I would just recommend to you guys to kind of get clear on what you're trying to accomplish, and then reverse engineer it from there.
I agree with you. Councilman Bowden, you kind of got some feedback from just about everybody here. Any suggestions, Mr. Fountain, on pathway forward?
It's a good question, Mr. Chairman. I think it would be, we've had some good suggestions from all the different council members on the committee. We could probably do a little bit of work at the staff level, kind of reach back out to some of the council members for specifics. I think one of the hardest parts with all of these committees is to get a good membership group that are truly invested in the work, because a committee is a huge amount of work when it's done correctly. And I think we had a few people who were very heavily invested early, and a lot of people who are interested in the city doing something to relieve stormwater on the committee. But it was part of the reason it somewhat fizzled out was once we had projects moving, I think a lot of people kind of were able to say, good, we kind of accomplished our mission, we're done as a committee, rather than, okay, what do we do next? How do we keep going? Just because, as all of us get onto a lot of, all the people who are generally community active are on a lot of committees and have a lot of activities. So I think the broader you can make the categories to have people who are truly invested in the success of the work, even if they don't maybe hit every single stakeholder group you would ideally like to have, that can be more successful. So I would probably, my recommendation is slightly broader categories rather than quite such narrow specific categories, even though we certainly want to get input from all of those groups. They don't always have to have, like you had mentioned, would the Chamber of Commerce be a good fit versus potentially a like a local landowner? I don't know. I mean, they have different opinions, but if one group is very willing to be very invested and one group we're struggling to find a member from, sometimes that more invested member could be helpful. But there's no right answer. I think Councilman Appel had a really good point of going back to the purpose statement. This committee worked really well with the original purpose. This was, let's build a big collaborative set of projects at the base of the basin, which is the flood storage project that we pushed forward and have moving through construction already. So if we have our next view figuring out exactly what that is, I really like the idea of trying to tie it with the work, because I think the work has a lot of that framework and groundwork built into it in representation to say, let's use some of their expertise and resources from that economic development side and then try to tie that into the authority. And then the authority sort of taking that input and making recommendations to council off of the input from the work and the input from with that vision from the local basically perspective of Church Creek rather than all of West Ashley.
Right.
I'm not sure that was super focused on my end either, but I was trying to talk around a couple subjects there.
Gotcha. Councilman Shahid.
It just ties in nicely with what Matt just said with the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. And you've got experienced people on there who are going to hang in there for a while. Take advantage of it.
Right. I mean, just right now, is Kevin on it? Shealy, Councilman Shealy on the
No. It's you, me, and Councilmember
Brady.
Right.
Yeah, we need it.
But Kevin but Councilmember Shealy could be on a little working group for it, and that I think everything that Matt said sort of reflects what what Eric's opinion of this was, which is that they already staff West Ashley Revitalization Commission, so it might just be a better place to put the economic part of this, as sort of falling under the planning folks.
Right. I guess what I was trying to do is get some symmetry between some people already on the commission that obviously will be in a position to be in knowledge of your goals and objectives here. For example, I mean, County Councilman Moody is on that commission, which represents that area. His district, I believe that his district does his district represent that area? Who's the County Councilman now? Okay.
It was Representative Middleton in the previous
right. But I
previous
think we drew the lines, right?
Membership.
I know, but I think his district got shifted more down towards Councilman Bell's area. And I thought Councilman Moody has that area. And obviously, if you were on the commission, and Kevin or even Carl stays on the commission, you'd have the county council person, 2 councilmen from that area that would already be on the commission. And then obviously a stakeholder group you put together for the West Ashley Revitalization. I mean, for the Church Creek Basin, stakeholder group, whatever. But anyway, so what's going to be the action step after this discussion? Councilmember Bowden, what would you like to see the action step be on the other side of this discussion? As a matter of fact, we got Mr. Morris on the line. Mr. Morris, do you have any input on this?
No, I'm just listening. The comments that I've heard are really good. I think when you're talking about building public support or education, it's important to have community stakeholders involved when you're talking about designing, designing infrastructure, understanding what's possible, again, with either in a physical engineering sense, or a fiscal sense. I think those kind of discussions are best left to some subset of experts. They're tricky, so I would leave it at that.
You know, one of the things that Mr. Morris did last spring or summer, when it was, he had a workshop on really Haggard Street that came up. It was on Friday at 12 o'clock on a beautiful day. I mean, it was an absolutely beautiful day. And I did not want to go on a Friday at 12 o'clock to anybody's workshop. But Dudley drugged me there. And that thing has evolved into, because Mr. Morris had the great stakeholders there, Housing Authority, Medical University folk, obviously city folk. Can you imagine if you pull something together like that for the Church Creek drainage basin area? It has now expanded out to include the Citadel, and of course the mayor talked to State Highway, Secretary of Transportation, and now Carter, one of the main terminal points, is going to be through there. So that to me, I thought that was a great workshop that spun into something that right now action steps and funding has gotten put in place in less than, when was that workshop?
So I'm older than a lot of you, but I think that was in May or
Okay, in May.
May or
Okay.
June, May or June of this year. Sorry.
So one meeting in May has led to, I think, a comprehensive process because the right people were in the room. So hypothetically, if something like that was done for, you know, the drainage basin out this area, you know, number one, who would be some of the stakeholders we need to have in the room for that workshop? That I think can maybe grow from there to something that would be task oriented and, you know, begin to hit objectives. In particular now, since we know what some of the solutions are. I mean, I think, don't you think, Mr. Fountain, we're further along the way, certainly than we were when we went with Hagan Avenue, when we met with Morris and his team over there.
All that I might add is I think some of the mapping from the water plan that is under development for the basins in outer West Ashley will paint a picture that should help inform sort of the strategies over the next 10 to 20 years as we look at that basin and the uses of land and other facilities out there. So you'll see this changing nature of the flood risk out there. It isn't as extreme as in some other areas, but it is substantial. So once we get that draft out again in early 2024, y'all can look at that, and then maybe we make a decision again with Matt and planning and resilience to form some, in the council members, to form some sort of effort there. But again, it isn't just that basin, Forest Acres Basin, the Doo-Wop Basin, they're all a bit challenged in the next sort of 20 years. So.
All right, Councilman Bowden.
Maybe the best thing to do is for maybe me and Councilmember Shealy to get with staff and bring more specific suggestions for what should make up this committee, and we use that as a better starting point. But thank you for this conversation. This was very helpful for my thinking.
Well, thank you for bringing it forward. Any last comments? All right. And because we had able-bodied legal ears listening on that, ready, willing, and able to jump in. If we have no final comments, by acclamation, we stand adjourned and look forward to seeing all of y'all tomorrow.
All right, y'all have a good evening.